You know, life is funny. You know, things happen to you that's not so good, and it'll be going on for a certain time period in your life, and you're actually convinced that just because those awful set of circumstances are happening to you now, that those things actually define the rest of your life. It's actually called arrested development. You get trapped into that spot in time, in the past, and you believe that your present and your future is representative of that awful thing that happened to you. What I want to tell you is, lie, lie, lie. Don't let the devil lie to you like that. And I had the opportunity to interview 3 incredible people that actually prove my point that because something awful has happened to you in your life, it does not define you, that actually you can move forth and get past this stuff simply through the power of believing in God and knowing that you are worth fighting for. So the folks that I talked to were 3 powerful people: Sabrina Kirkland, Desmond Jones, and Nadine Ali. And they have a wonderful, wonderful radio show called Shout Out Your Issues. And I had the pleasure of being on their show, and I invited them to come back to the studio and to talk to me about the connection of child sexual assault and sex trafficking. Now, I know a lot of people tend to shy away from this subject because it hits too close to home, but believe it or not, a large percentage of adults have gone through sexual assault as children and are living silently with this, and it has imprisoned them and entrapped them in arrested development where they feel just because some evil person did something to them when they were a child, that defines who they are as a person, and they are in prison forever. So all 3 of us talked about our past and our issues of growing up with being sexually assaulted as children, but more importantly, how we were able to move forward and find freedom, and how now we, through the power of Christ, are helping others find that power as well. So I want you guys to really pay attention to this video and share this video and enjoy a very intriguing conversation about how just a small spark of light can wipe out an entire life of darkness. Check this video out. You're gonna love it, trust me. Welcome everybody, this is your boy NYGHTSTORM, and on today's episode of the Night Storms, I got 3 fantastic guests. As you see, it ain't even hard enough room on the camera, but we got 3 awesome folks doing great things in the community, and we even got somebody on the phone, man. Cool. So, all right, now let's get into the meat of this conversation, because as you know, we're here in Atlanta, but there is human trafficking is an issue that's been going on around the country. But us being here in Atlanta as the hub, we can understand that there is a lot of suffering with children, young adults who've been trapped into this. And Sabrina, we're going to start with you, but can you talk about some of the issues that come from young people who have unfortunately suffered through human trafficking? Because we all understand the aspects of this is a bad thing, but can you talk about some of the effects that this have on folks who have gone through this kind of abuse, ma'am?
Absolutely. I first want to start off and saying, because I like to put numbers on stuff.
Yes, ma'am.
So, because stats are important. Human trafficking is $150 billion industry.
I don't think they heard you. Was that a billion with a B?
B with a B, not a M. B.
Yes, ma'am.
It is $150 billion industry. It's second to guns. The number has probably increased since last year.
Yes, ma'am.
This was the number as of last year. It was $150 billion industry off of the backs of our children, of our of the women and our young men. This is domestic. This is not international. This is domestic minor sex trafficking, and that means domestically here in the United States, international not included. We've had cases where it has been, our victims have been said to have been traumatized so much it is akin to PTSD,
Wow.
which is post-traumatic stress disorder that we think only soldiers deal with.
Yeah.
That's not the truth. We have children that are dealing with trauma that's impacted on top of trauma, on top of trauma. We have children that are dealing with abuse. Most of our children that are abused at home first. Some type of family member or a friend
Right.
that have molested them or have been molesting them. And what they fail to realize is when you start this at home, you now have put a kick me sign on the back. You know how you're walking around like it has a sign on your back that says kick me. You remember that little prank they used to pull?
Yeah.
Well, you now have put a sign literally on that child saying easy prey.
Wow.
And so what happens when you do that is it takes away, it strips away your morality. It strips away your sense of having control over your own self. And the way it happens is, I can now say, after years of it happening to me for 8 years, I felt like a dead man walking. I was abused for 8 years, and I felt soulless.
Wow.
And that's what happens when someone takes your body without you giving permission. You've now taken away my one God-given right. That thing that I chose to give, you've snatched that away from me.
Wow.
So there's a feeling of vulnerability. There's a feeling of hopelessness. And so you have a choice. You either become a predator, you stay a prey, which is a victim, or you become an advocate like myself to say, you know what, I'm taking control of this situation and you can no longer hurt me.
I like what you're saying right there about taking control. And Nadine, I want to get your perspective on this as well, because Sabrina was talking from a real world perspective of this has happened to me. And now, in the ways have you seen this, and you work with folks that are adults now, and Sabrina talked about the PTSD. She talked about the hopeless feeling. She talked about the victimhood. What things, ma'am, have you seen, Nadine, with adults dealing with this as well?
You know, I appreciate you asking that question. We've had seminars and always are out in the community, and we do work with several psychologists, counselors, psychiatrists, and they've shared some of the information of what they've seen. Most of it is people go to their grave and not getting any help, holding that in, and they don't realize that eats them to the grave because they are not letting it out. I really appreciate Sabrina and we work so well together diligently because we both have a passion, including Desmond, about just knowledge, giving people information. And to me, when you are able to state what has happened to you, that's a great relief from you, and you're being moved to the next level of freeing yourself from that. And again, like we've talked about before, me and Sabrina, it lessens the power of that person who took advantage of you. You know, it's so much of that's going on, and you wonder why people snap. You wonder why people have mental problems. But that's the very reason why we're out here taking a stand and letting people know that, look, stop doing this, because this stuff is just not happening, you know, within the last several years. It's been going on for centuries, and it's time to stop. And I really, again, appreciate Sabrina being able to tell her story, because the more she does that, the more release she get from within herself.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. And I appreciate that aspect as well. And Desmond, you know, as a man, and you say you have two sons.
Two boys, yes.
Okay, and this isn't just happening to our daughters. This is also happening to our sons, and and as a man and as a father, we want to protect our children. And what advice can you give? Because some of the males that this has happened to, they feel ashamed to talk about it. They feel like they've lost their manhood. So is there any kind of words of wisdom you can give, sir, on continuing to empower young men and saying, just because this happened to you, that does not mean you're not a man, and you should not feel ashamed at something happening to you? And with two sons of your own, can you give a perspective just from a male point of view, sir?
Yes, absolutely. This is the first time ever me talking about this on camera. Mm-hmm. But I too was molested as a child.
Yes, sir.
So what that did to me, it made me feel like it was my fault. Mm-hmm. And for a long time, I kind of buried it. Mm-hmm. A long time, wouldn't really talk about it. I've told some people about it, but just not really brought it to the forefront of my life. Mm-hmm. But from a male's perspective, having two boys, it at the time made me feel helpless. Mm-hmm. It made me feel like, one, like I said, it was my fault. It made me feel like, I couldn't do anything to control it. So with having two boys and knowing what's out there in the world, and they not knowing, they're innocent, I don't want to ever make them feel or ever have them feel like I felt helpless, right. Or make them feel like it was their fault.
Right.
And I see some of the problem that we as adults have is making this subject a taboo subject. Mm-hmm. I think more people need to talk about it. Need to be on the forefront of everything. We talk about everything else in school. We talk about bullying. We talk about
brother.
So this is something that should be talked about, because a lot of kids, especially from a male perspective, we don't want to talk about this because males are not geared to have emotions and not supposed to feel some kind of way, but we're human.
Yes, sir.
Just like the next person.
Just like the next person.
I feel just like someone else's feel. And how I feel, a lot of men are probably holding on to this. A lot of men are probably, dealing with this issue that really haven't come out because it's not masculine to come out. It's not the manly thing to do to come out. But for me, it's the human thing to do.
It's the human thing, and I like what you said there, and I also like what Nadine said as well about people holding on to this. And sir, we have a common history, because I too was raped as a child. And I use the word rape because that's exactly what it was. I was 11 years old, and it was by a guy who pretended to be a man of God. And he raped me at camp and said, this is what God wants, because unfortunately, 30 years previous, someone raped him. And that was his way of gaining his power back, because his power was taken. Right. So the thing was for him, through this cycle, was to take someone else's power. And for many years, just as you said, I felt powerless as well. It affected me growing up as an adult. It affected even, my marriage. It affected even how I raised my kids. And I felt like a victim. But just as you said, Sabrina, the moment when I said I'm no longer a victim and I no longer allow that to have power over my life, that is when I got my breakthrough. And I was no longer ashamed to talk about it, because let's just be real. I'm a 6'1", 320-pound powerlifting dude. I'm about as masculine. You're a big dude too. We're about as masculine as it gets. But some guys feel weak. And we want to break this cycle that keeps perpetuating itself. So talking about it is empowerment. So, and I want to bring this back to you, Sabrina, and we want to talk about the show that you guys have, because you give a platform for people to openly come on and start talking about the issues in the community. So can you tell me about your show, ma'am? You and Nadine.
Oh, absolutely. Speak Out Your Issues, as Miss Nadine said, was her show. And we met actually she used to be a co-host, anchor on People TV.
Okay. And
I was one of the guests there, and talking about the book, My Private Space, and then talking about human trafficking and the issues and talking about our children that were being abused. And so after the show, she came up to me and she says, you know what, I want to be involved in what you're doing. I was like, okay, you know, and I had just moved up to Atlanta. I didn't really know anyone. And she literally took me under her wing. And Miss Nadine does not say, but she is very well connected politically. So she had me in front of every judge, every legislator, every senator, every Democratic Party, every person that she thought that needed to know what we were out here doing. She put me out there to them. And then she said, you know, I have a show. It's called Speak Out Your Issues. And would you like to be the co-host? And
Beautiful.
I'm like, sure. And that's when we started. Was it last year, early part of last year? We started Speak Out Your Issue with Miss Show You Right, Nadine, and Sabrina. And so we are always out and about in the community educating, but wanting to give, and just like you said, giving people that platform to speak out whatever their issues are.
Yes, ma'am.
Because people have issues. And we're so used to, as a society, I always call it when we're home, you know, what happens in my house stays in my house. But I also say, you know, we have the white elephant in the room is no longer silent. He's no longer invisible. He's tearing up the china. He's breaking all the furniture, and he's wreaking havoc.
He's wrecking stuff.
Okay.
He is wrecking stuff.
He's causing some issues. And so it's time for us to address the elephant in the room. What goes on in my house does no longer stay in my house. If you're hurting me and you're violating me, that can no longer stay in the house.
Wait a minute, I think I need you to say this one more time, because I know Nadine gonna echo this in a second. And we're gonna get to you, Nadine. Hold on now, sister. We're gonna get to you. But I need for you, Sabrina, to say this one more time, because we have been taught for so many decades, you know, what would go on in my house is stay in my house, ain't none of nobody's business, but everybody can see the results of what's going on, and we going out hurting other people because we trying to keep some secret in the house. So say that one more time, sister. One more time.
It's time for us to stop making the elephant in the room silent because he's tearing up the house. What happens in our house is no longer a secret. What happens in our house does no longer stay in our house. And for me, for the book I have, I said, you know, my private space is not our secret. When you're hurting me, when you're violating my rights, it's not a secret. When you're making me feel less than a human being, that's not a secret. When you taking out your sick fantasies out on me and you're violating and hurting me, that's not a secret.
Right.
So it's time for us now to stop saying, you know, this is a family secret. Hello, you may think it's a family secret, but let me tell you a secret. Everybody knows your secret.
Everybody knows.
Okay? Because they can see what's going on. They see mom. I grew up in a household where my mom was being beaten black and blue almost every day. On top of me being molested or raped, my mom was being beaten. So everybody saw the evidence of, because she walked around with a black eye like it was a trophy. She had no problems with that. So everybody knew that there was a problem in my family, but no one said anything.
Nobody said anything.
I always say it's time for us as a community to take our head out of the sand. We are not ostriches. We have a mouth. We do not get the right. You know when a child or a woman is being beaten and abused, pick up a phone. You can call anonymously and say, hey, I need the police to come here because I'm afraid that this woman is going to die or this child is going to die because they are being abused. It's time for us as a community to stand up. I say it takes a nation to raise a generation. I'm sorry, it takes a village to raise a child, but a nation to raise a generation. But now for our generation, we have failed our children because we have allowed social media and all this, you know, the theater, movies, and all this other glamorized stuff to glamorize our life and color over our life. It's no longer a secret. It's time for us to take a stand and do something about this problem. I'm tired of raising awareness. We are all aware of what's going on. It's time for now to do something about it.
And I love this. And Nadine, I'm gonna give you the last word on this before we wrap up. You know, because there's been a huge thing in the community about snitching. Okay. You know, I ain't no snitch. You know, I ain't no snitch. I ain't gonna tell nothing. But the fact of the matter is, if you see someone being assaulted, okay, and being hurt, because it's always different when it's your boy. You know, it's always different when it's your relative. Well, how come nobody helped her? How come y'all knew this was going on, but nobody want to say nothing? And then we say, well, shawty, we didn't want to snitch. We didn't want to snitch. But you see the pain of what's going on, and then it affects the outward community, and the cycle perpetuates itself. So Nadine, I'm gonna give you the last word on this, because I want you to plug the show and how people can find you, and what about this, I'm gonna stay quiet because it's none of my business, and I see it for myself, folks being hurt and abused. Absolutely. But you know, it ain't my business, shawty. So can you talk about that, please, ma'am?
I sure can, and thank you all so much. As Miss Sabrina was talking, you know, it just came to me that everything is just already spilled out and over, okay? Like she's saying, it's time out for the silence. And even earlier, I was looking at, it's time for the elephant to stop being up in the clouds, okay? Come back, bring back love within the human family, the human race. We need to bring it back down to the ground, and like you said, get with it on when we see stuff, like they say, when you see something, say something, and do something, I'm going to add. Simply because we've gone through the 80s and 90s, especially the 90s and 2000s, where even today, the younger generation and even the older generation, when they're seeing something, they're filming it instead of trying to help. We've taken out the emotional side of everything and the caring side of everything. You know, when we're seeing something going on, and it's already spilled over. It's way too time out, I would say, for all of that, and for us to reel back in and start helping one another. You know, I feel and see the passion from all three of you all in reference to this, along with myself. This is going to be a powerful video. I would say they can always tune in, speak out your issue on Thursdays from 8 to 9 to have comments or whatever. And I don't know the number right off. I have this. I'm going to say that in a minute. But always tune in and look at what we're doing on WLMRradio.com every Sunday, 6 to 7 Eastern Standard Time. We also have Speak Out Your Issues YouTube as well. Again, I can't say enough. It's time over, out, and beyond of us taking our community back, taking our caring back, and bringing love back, and stamping out this beast. I want to say something else, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
But I say this beast, and I don't usually use profanity, but it's really literally time out for that. Again, I appreciate all three of you all for sharing, because you know, this is going to resonate to a lot of people, and we're probably
okay. But one thing I want to say to close this out, and Desmond, Nadine, and Sabrina, you know, I want to also say thank you guys, you know, for the work that you're doing, because of that elephant that's in the room that's been there for so long that they actually squatting in our house. Okay, they've been there so long, they might as well be moved in and they eating out the refrigerator and drinking the Kool-Aid. I'm just saying, that's how long the issue has been in our communities. And I want to tell you the work that you guys are doing on telling people to be empowered by speaking out, and not just speaking out, but actually doing something, and how it changes lives is what's good about our country.
Absolutely.
Okay? And so many people in our country are hurting on all shades and colors, and this affects everybody, so many folks. And anybody can come to you all and get that empowerment and get that help. And I want to make sure we drive as many people to you all as possible. And also, one last word, we also have to take onus on ourselves. And we have to be responsible for the leadership in our home. You know, men, we have to be men. We have to honor and cherish our women and be there to raise our children. And sometimes, you know, we get dogged out. But I tell you this, be there for your babies and do something to change lives. And our women, we have to be better stewards of our kids as well. We can't sit there and watch something happen or be a part of the problem and expect somebody else to be the solution. We have to take the power back and give that power to our babies. So on that note, I want to say God bless anybody that's watching this video. Please feel free, and I'm gonna put the website up one more time. Please feel free to contact Nadine, to contact Sabrina, and you better believe Desmond gonna make sure this happens, especially on the websites.
Right.
But I want to thank you all, Miss Nadine. Thank you, ma'am.
Yes, no problem.
Okay, and Sabrina want to get one last word. You go ahead, man.
To our viewers, I just want you to know that when you know your value, no one can ever diminish your worth.
Amen. Woo.